everyone wants the Niners to take an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman for obvious reasons. We just saw the Eagles win a Super Bowl, dominate a Super Bowl in the trenches. The Niners haven't really addressed the trenches much in the last few years. The thing about the draft is just because you want something, you need something, doesn't mean that's necessarily the best player available when you pick. Is there any scenario in your mind where the Niners don't take a lineman in round one?
Sure. I mean, last year I didn't think there was a scenario where they wouldn't, and they did. So it's always possible. And with the 11th pick overall, you really do want to take the best player available. If there's some kind of freak out there still at 11, you need to get them. And I won't be mad if that player exists. Most likely, though, based on round 1, 11th pick overall, that's typically a quarterback or a lineman of some sort. Typically, that's who goes in the top 11, or some maybe freaky wide receiver out there. Now, it would not surprise me tremendously if they end up going with a receiver at 11. I don't know who's out there, who's going to be available at 11. I haven't done a ton of mock drafts this coming season, but you're losing Deebo Samuel. You have Juwan Jennings. You have Brandon Ayuk not coming back till maybe December. You have a wide receiver issue with the 49ers. They need a wide receiver. So do they believe Ricky Pearsall's a wide receiver one and can take that role? I don't think they do. I don't think he is. I like Ricky, what I've seen from him. I think he's a good, slot guy or a wide receiver 3 or 2 or 3. But I don't see him as like the guy. So they still need that. That's a need they've had on this team. I mean, the best that they've had in that role is Brandon Ayuk. And honestly, he's probably really a wide receiver too, if we're being real. That Brandon Ayuk is that's probably what he is, like a really good wide receiver too. So they've had this need for a long time, and they still do. Jacob Cowing is not going to fill that role. They have to find somebody to fill that slot. So to me, if it's not going to be offense or defensive line, which I hope it is, it's going to be a wide receiver. That's the only other player that you would draft so high outside of quarterback.
So one wide receiver they could take is Luther Burden III from Missouri. He's considered a year one starter on NFL.com, and he's compared to Garrett Wilson. That's one guy they could take. Two other guys. Someone brought up earlier, Ashton Genty, the running back. Gets comped to Alvin Kamara a lot. There's a world where he's the best player available, and you don't really like taking running backs that high, so I could see why you wouldn't want to do it. Also, you already have Christian McCaffrey, although I don't really know what you have with Christian McCaffrey. I wouldn't hate the Ashton Genty pick, although I kind of expect the Bears to take him with the 10th pick because Ben Johnson had so much success with Jahmyr Gibbs, and they're kind of similar. But what I want to bring up is Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. That player is very interesting. He looks really incredible. I'm not a great scout by any measure, but when I watch him, I mean, have you watched him?
Yeah, I watched him this last, in the playoffs or whatever. He seems good. 11th overall. I wouldn't do it. There's this is a very talented tight end class, and I think you can find a really good tight end in later rounds. I would not do that personally. You got George Kittle on your team still at this moment to spend the 11th overall draft pick on a tight end who's going to be your tight end 2 would be crazy to me.
Let me make the case for it.
Okay.
George Kittle's a great player. George Kittle's going to be 32 in October, and the Niners have given out a lot of extensions to players in their 30s. Mm-hmm. They might need to stop doing that eventually. And eventually, George Kittle's going to break down. He played through broken ribs all year. He's super tough. He's a savage. But you could get a lot for George Kittle. I mean, it's the kind of move that I feel like George Seifert or Bill Walsh would have considered. We love George Kittle. He's a great player, but he's 32. We could trade him for a first-round pick maybe and replace him with Tyler Warren. Again, I'm not a great scout, but just watching him, he looks like the best tight end I can remember coming out of college. He's 6'6", 2'6". He's freaking huge. He's a really good blocker. You could put him on the line of scrimmage. You could put him in the backfield at fullback. He's got great hand-eye coordination. He's so good after the catch that they actually used him on direct snaps as like a running back at Penn State. I've never seen a tight end who could do things like that. He can also throw. He was a quarterback at one point. So he seems like a very interesting offensive weapon, a very unique one. And if they were to trade Kittle to get more picks, like maybe another first-round pick this year where they could take an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, I could see him doing something cute like that.
I hope they don't. I agree. Like when I watch him, he looks really good, but I think George Kittle is the leader of this team. I feel like they're not ready to move on from him, nor should they. They need that veteran leadership from somebody. And so if you're going to keep Kittle, which I assume they are going to, I'm not comfortable drafting Warren.
Okay, let me keep trying because you keep bringing up really good points. How about you draft Tyler Warren, you keep Kittle, you don't extend Kittle. Kittle plays out the final year of his contract. You have Warren and Kittle on the field together, 2 tight end sets, or you could put Warren at fullback, get rid of Juszczyk. And then next year, decide whether that's a pairing you want to keep going in the future or if Warren is just the heir apparent.
I think this tight end class is so deep and you have so many other needs. And if you look at, like, who's the last player to get drafted that high? The dude on the Falcons, what's his name? Last tight end.
Pitts.
Who?
Pitts. Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts. Yeah. Didn't really work out like they were hoping.
No.
Right? That's not a good example of why you should do it. I think for the 49ers, their biggest needs are on defense and this O-line. I think that's what needs to be addressed. Maybe if the top corner is still available at 11, maybe you want to go that route, something like that. Maybe if they don't get Greenlaw, they go linebacker. That could be a possibility. But I would be shocked if they go tight end when they have the best tight end in the NFL on their team right now. I do think they get a tight end, but I don't think it'll be with number 11.
I just feel like if they're seriously considering taking a wide receiver in round 1, as you mentioned that they could be, because it's Kyle and they obviously need one to replace Deebo Samuel. Like if they're thinking they might want to take Burden or McMillan from Arizona at 11, I would argue that Tyler Warren is a better offensive weapon than they are. But again, maybe I'm wrong. Just they don't I can't remember. He's so big. He really does remind me of Rob Gronkowski, and he can do he has all these little gadget things he can do in addition that are kind of nice.
The problem is they have George Kittle and they don't even use him.
That's true.
I
wanted to bring up earlier, how Kyle has to keep giving Deebo the ball because he's I almost feel like he's scared of Deebo. He wants Deebo to like him. If only Kittle was that demanding and made Kyle feel like he didn't necessarily like him, maybe he'd get 150 targets a year.
It happened. Remember?
Yeah.
Remember that one game? I forget what game it was this season.
Buffalo.
Yeah, he talked about only got one or two. And then the very next game, he just went crazy. So Kittle needs to be more of that guy. This is his team, essentially. Kittle needs to be more of that guy. One thing I do want to say also is the loss of Deebo Samuel is going to be great for the 49ers. It's going to be great because Kyle Shanahan doesn't have to force feed him the ball. And it's going to be great because it's going to be hard to find a wide receiver that doesn't run routes better than Deebo Samuel and has better hands than Deebo Samuel, if I'm being real here.